Hello, welcome to Board Deck and Dice. It's me, Humphrey Schnifferwickle, half man, half table, half handbag. Today we are reviewing Sheriff of Nottingham. Sheriff of Nottingham is a bluffing and deception game for 3 to 5 players. Or 6 players with the expansion. Let's take a look at what you get. First thing I want to show you is the insert, which is 2 pieces, which keeps all your coins and all your cards nice and can be used in the game. I'm just going to move them to one side, but this is how that displays. This one is where your main goods are kept. You have a central pile, and after you've dealt everyone 6 cards, you'll deal 5 cards to each discard pile. And then at certain points in the game, players can look through and take cards from the discard pile. Let's take a look at some cards. There are 2 types of cards in the game. Contraband, which are red, and legal, which are green. They both have the same information on them: the name, the money they're worth at the end of the game, and the penalty you will pay if you fail to smuggle them through, or if the sheriff makes a false accusation. That is always the penalty you will pay. Some of the contraband goods, and you can take these out if you don't want to play with them, are also golden goods, and they will count as 2 of the type of legal good at the end. So this bread, this rye bread, counts as 2 normal bread at the end of the game. Each character, as well as their 6 starting game cards, gets a player board and a bag. The player board gives you places to store your contraband and all your legal goods, and it also reminds you of what is the king and queen bonus for goods at the end of the game. So the player who collects the most apples, as in most cards, will get 20 bonus points, and the second player will get 10. So chickens are worth the least, cheese and bread are the same, and apples are the biggest bonus, but also worth the least on their actual card. So one player will start as the sheriff, and they will have this little charming little standee in front of them to denote them as the sheriff, and every other player will look at their 6 cards and they will have a chance to discard some. So they put some, let's say I've got bread there, so I'll keep that. And I'm going to put these 3 to the side, and I can either take from either discard pile and look through the discard piles, or I can take from the top blindly. So this time I'm going to take from the top blindly, and because I've played it last time and not shuffled yet, I get more bread. Then, so that's the market phase. Then they will load their bag. So I've got a choice. I could load it with 4 legal items, which are the bread, or I can try and sneak in one of these illegal items as well. What I have to remember is I have to put 1 to 5 cards in this bag, and I cannot lie about that number. So the amount of cards I put in, I have to tell the truth about. I can only claim 1 type of good. So if I put in, let's say, all legal goods, but let's say I put in, come to me, my apple friend. Let's say I put in 3 bread and an apple. I wouldn't be able to say, I've got 3 bread and 1 apple in there. I have to say either I have 4 apples, 4 bread, or just lie outright, 4 chicken or 4 cheese. I cannot claim that my goods are contraband, so if I put contraband in there, I cannot say that they're all illegal apples, for example. So let's say this time I'm going to put in 4 bread, because 4 bread's very unlikely, and the sheriff might not expect me to put 4 bread in. So I pop that in. I might make my declaration here, part 3, and I give it to the sheriff and say 4 bread. Now when I give it to the sheriff, I might want to bribe him not to open my bag. So I might say, and for your trouble, sheriff, there's also a gold there, just between friends. The sheriff will then take the bag and any bribes I've offered and decide whether to open it or not. Bribes can be goods that you've already declared, already taken through to your market. They can be goods from in the bag, but you can. So if I said this is 4 bread, if I said this was 4 apples, and I will give the sheriff one of those apples, then when I open them up, they're all bread. I'm not bound to that promise because I didn't have any apples. Also, future promises are not binding. So I might say to this sheriff, well, you don't open my bag now and I won't open yours later, and then later I do open it. So there's all sorts of things you can offer and claim and try and bribe the sheriff with, and the sheriff can come back with his own kind of offers as well. If the sheriff pops the button, they are committed to looking into it. Once they look into it, it will either be correct or false. So in this case, it's correct. The sheriff would owe me 8 coins because he has falsely accused me. However, if I'd done a cheaty one, say with apple, then I would keep all the breads that are true. So if I'd claimed 4 breads, I'd keep the 3 breads, but I'd pay the sheriff for the apple, and he would discard that from to one of the discard piles. If I had taken a contraband in, I would pay the sheriff. I would still get my legal goods, and that would go there as well. So you always get the goods that you've claimed correctly, but anything you have lied about, you pay the sheriff. If all your goods are what you said they are, the sheriff will pay you. The round ends, people draw back up to 6 cards. The new sheriff is the player to the left of the current sheriff, and you play on until everyone has been sheriff either 2 or 3 times, depending on player count. That is Sheriff of Nottingham. I really, really like Sheriff of Nottingham. From the first game, when you're kind of trying to work out what you want to take through and seeing what other people are taking through, to your second and third games where you start to work out tactics like, if I claim this, if I put these goods in, but claim it as these goods and then promise the sheriff one of the goods that aren't in there, then I don't have to fulfill my promise. It's all very sneaky and double thinky, and you get alliances formed and broken at within minutes. The sheriff feels really powerful, but then everyone else is going to be the sheriff. And I like the way that the money is all passed between players. So you aren't gonna, when you're the sheriff, that's your chance to get some income so you can bribe other sheriffs. But when you're not the sheriff, when you're just a marketer, you want to kind of get some money as well. You don't want to be paying the sheriff money. Money counts as points at the end. You count up all your money, you count up who's king and queen of each category, and then you add up all the coins on your cards that you smuggled through as well. I really like it. If I had a couple of complaints, the insert, although it's nice, if you try and keep the coins in there without bagging them up, they're going to go everywhere as soon as you move the box. There's no board to kind of put on top of them that keeps them in place. The setup can be a bit fiddly. You've got to shuffle a massive amount of cards, and if you haven't done that when you've played last, then all those cards are going to be in groups of the same type. So last time I played, that's why all the bread is at the top, because someone collected all the bread. So to shuffle that up can be a bit of a pain. Plus, if you're playing less than 4 players, you have to take out quite a lot of cards. Now, they do have symbols on, so it's a bit easier than it sounds, but there is that kind of setup, which for a game like this can be a little bit of an issue. Other negatives are that with 4 or 5 players, it can take quite a long time, a surprisingly long time to play. And that really depends on how quick your sheriffs are to make decisions, how much back and forth there is. But you wouldn't expect the game to take as long as it has done for me on occasions. 3 players, it works okay, but then you've only got 1 sheriff, and then you each take a turn 3 times. It does work okay, but obviously this is a game that's better with more players, but it is going to take longer. What I would say as well is when new players start, without your guidance, they can make bribes that are ridiculous. So, first time player played this with me the other day, and they offered me 50, and I said, 50? 15? And they said, no, 50. and I'd say that's quite a lot to bribe me. Then they offered me 20 and I snapped the hand off. Now 20 is still quite a lot to bribe, because if you think about it, you don't want to bribe more than the penalty might be. So if you're only going to be paying 2 if the sheriff opens the bag, you only really want to pay 1 to stop him opening the bag, because the payoff is not so much. It's a little bit more complicated than that if there's a close race for who's going to have the most cheese or one type of item. But also there's the kind of double bluff of bribing the sheriff low because you want them to open the bag and pay you. So that's really clever as well. I think this is a great game. I think the added physicality of having the bags that you pop closed and pop open and having that as part of the game is really good. I like that you get rewarded for collecting, for set collection as well. I like an awful lot about this game. I've recently got and played the expansion, and that does add some more flavour to it, some more depth. But for a bluffing deception game, I don't think you can go far wrong with Sheriff and Nottingham. I think it's a lot of fun. There'll be a lot of laughter. You see people who did not expect to lie to you flip open their bag and suddenly take out 5 cards that they told you were apples and put them all face down under the contraband section of their player board, and you suddenly look at them a little bit differently. Players can play it safe, and that is a viable means to win the game, but often you find players who play it safe later on in the game will risk it a bit, and you've got to judge people like that as well. It's fantastic. It's one of my favourite deduction games. The only thing that stops me pulling out more is the length of time and the fact that I prefer it with 4 players to 3. Although I would play it with 3 players, having done it now a couple of times and enjoyed it more each time. I would do that as well, even with the additional setup things. So, Sheriff of Nottingham, intimidation factor, I think it's quite low. There's not so many components. Everything's explained on the board. Some of the words, it seems that there's 5 phases in each turn, but a lot of them are just like that. Rulebook is good, clear. Again, perhaps, if anything, there's a bit too much explanation in it, perhaps a bit too many examples, but examples are always good, so I cut them slack on that. Fun, tops out on fun. This game is a lot of fun. I've never seen it fall flat. I've never seen everyone just play safe. Everyone really gets into that sheriff role, and if you've got shire players, don't make them the sheriff first. Let them be mistreated by a few sheriffs before it gets round to them, and you will see that even shy players want to have their revenge on people who have opened their bags or not taken their bribes. So that's Sheriff of Nottingham, a strong recommendation from me, a game I love, and I'm really pleased to have been able to check out the expansion, which will come up in another video this week. Thanks very much for watching Board Deck and Dice. We'll see you next time.